G'day everyone. Today we're going to be making I'm going to be making a second video of how to make round shapes. In the last video you watched me make a perfect sphere. If you haven't watched that and you don't know how to make a perfect sphere and you would like to know, feel free to watch that video. If you're more interested in making ovoids or anything kind of round but not quite a circle, this is the video you're looking for. So we are back in Blockbench. I started a new project. This isn't going to be with the goal of making a finished project. This is just an example, and I'll do a couple of examples just so you can see the different ways you can apply this. It's similar to the sphere, but it's got a couple of important differences. We'll get to those shortly, but in the meantime we are going to start our shape. We start with a bone, as always, and we add a cube to it. S to resize. For this one, it doesn't matter as much if the bone is in the middle of the block, but it looks better that way, so we're doing it that way. Alright, so there is our starting block. Like with the sphere, we're going to duplicate it and we're going to rotate it. The rotations between the blocks can vary a little bit more for this than they can for a sphere. A sphere, they all have to be the same. For this, I would recommend doing rotations between the blocks of either 20 or 30 degrees. If you just need a small sphere and you don't need it to be that detailed, you can also do 45. If you have a calculator or you're good at math, you'll notice all of these numbers can divide evenly into 360, which is important because it's a round object, so you still need to be able to go all the way around. So 20, 30, 45, 22.5 works too if you're doing the math, and I believe 24 does. Don't go any smaller than 20 because it will be way too complicated for you to work with, and it will be way too many blocks for the mod to render. So if you do that, you'll be putting yourself through a lot of work for not a lot of payoff. It will also be too complicated for you to really work with, and you won't be able to tell that it's more detailed in-game because most of these round Digimon models are pretty small. If you're not using this for Digimon, I mean, I can't really tell you what to do, but I wouldn't recommend going any smaller than 20 degrees between the blocks anyway. Alright, so one block, another block rotated 25. Because I don't want this video to be incredibly long and I don't have as much time today, we're going to go with 30, which is completely acceptable. So 0 degrees, 30 degrees, 60 degrees, and 90 degrees. So there we have got, whoops, and you notice I'm using the vertex snap tool to get them all nicely lined up. This technique relies really heavily on the vertex snap, and we'll see how that works in a minute. So then we're going to duplicate these, flip them along the y-axis. If you don't have these buttons up here, you can get them by customizing your toolbar. They just flip the selected blocks along the x, y, and z axes respectively. Blockbench has a lot of tools. I really like that one, so I put it on my toolbar even though it isn't there by default, and then we're going to snap it. So you can see we have part of a circle. Now for this one we're not going to make full rings, we're just going to make half rings, which will give us a little more flexibility in the shape. This vertical block is important because this is what you're going to be snapping your next rings to. So you do have to have a block that's perfectly vertical or perfectly horizontal if you're building your shape the other way. We'll get to that in a moment. But it's half a circle. This is not an oval. So if you want an oval, easiest thing to do is extend this. And we've got that. And then you're going to duplicate your bone, and I'm going to rotate it by 30 degrees, not 85 degrees. Then you're going to vertex snap the entire piece to the corner of this middle block. So now we've got a nice curve, and I'm going to continue this the entire way around. Alright, so now we have this oval. It's basically a sphere, but these pieces are extended. So if this is the shape you're looking for, congrats, you're done. But maybe this isn't. Maybe you want a longer oval, or maybe you want a narrower oval. So I'm going to show you how to do those two next. And for the sake of my own sanity, I'm going to put this on a bone so I can move it out of the way. Alright, so now we have this. You can see it looks pretty round. It's only got 84 blocks, which might seem like a lot, but it's not thousands upon thousands of blocks that you might get if you're trying to do this with tiny little angles. So we're going to put that over there. We still have it, but we are not using it right now. Go away. And now, F2 to rename, example 2. So again, I'm going to rotate this by 30 degrees. This is 3 by 5. Instead of making this 3 by 3, which is what we have on this, I'm going to make it 3 by 4. And then I'm going to make the one above it 3 by 3. And then the final top block will also be 3 by 3. So now you've got this. You can already see it's a little taller. So I'm going to duplicate the bone. Now, what if I want it to be a really narrow one? What if instead of rotating the new bone by 30 degrees, I rotate it by 45? Now this is the part where it gets a little trial and error-y, because you see this isn't working. You can already see you're going to have too many overlaps with this. So we're going to go back to 30. I'm just going to finish this out really quickly. Alright, so here we have our rings. You can see it's a little taller than this blue one. Oops. Might move it up just so we can compare them a little bit. But you'll also see that it's got these weird caps on it. The more you start to vary the lengths and angles, which we'll get to later, of the different blocks in the curve, the more work you'll have to make them meet smoothly. It's still doable. However, we are going to have to make some changes. So this block, it's over here, but it actually belongs to this ring. So what we're going to do is we're going to take it, S to resize, and we're going to shrink it by 1. Because what is happening is these blocks are coming up to the top, and then they're extending across the top and overlapping with the curve coming up the other side. So we're going to resize each of these. Alright, so now that we've resized those, our top is much rounder. I left the bottom as it was for comparison. If for some reason you need this, you can go ahead and leave it, but if you want it to be a round shape, I would recommend just resizing those blocks so they don't overlap. So now you have two kinds of ovals. Now we have two kinds of ovals. I fixed the bottom there. But maybe you're thinking, you know what? I was really interested in that one you tried with the 45 degrees between each ring. Is there a way we can make it work? And the short answer is yes, there is. Step 1, we'll be getting our tall green oval out of the way. So we'll put him over there so we can still see him. Collapse these examples, and we're going to start example 3. So again, starting with our 3x3x3, I'm going to extend it by 1 this time instead of 2, just to make it 3x4. And then I'm going to duplicate it and I'm going to rotate it. But instead of rotating it by 30 degrees, I am going to rotate it by 22.5. 22.5 times 4 is 90, whereas 30 times 3 is 90. So we'll have 4 blocks above this block instead of the 3 that we've been having so far. 22.5 double is 45. I'm going to go back to 3 wide there, or 3 tall, I guess. Double it again, you get 67.5. And one more time is 90. Alright, so we have the side of our oval. You can already see, because the angles are smaller, it's a smoother curve than these ones back here. I forgot to put my ring on a bone, so I'm going to do that now. And we are going to duplicate the bone. And we're going to try rotating it by 45 degrees. We are going to snap it into place, and we're going to see it's already not really working. However, by playing around with it, we can make it work. So we're just going to shorten those so they're 3 instead of 4. Shorten these so they're 2 instead of 3. Snap them in place. The more complex you're getting with varying the angles and the sizes of the cubes in your oval, the more trial and error you're going to have to work with. There isn't really anything you can do about that. That's just the way it's going to be, unless you're quite good at math and you would rather do that than just try it till it works. That is also a valid approach. It's not one I've ever taken. Alright, so we shortened these, and as you can see, it's starting to work better. So we're going to do the same with the bottoms of the rings. Alright, so now we've got 2 rings, and I'm going to fill out the rest of our ovoid. Alright, so we have our shape in there, but as you can see, again, we have the overlap problem up here. Again, that's fixable. If you look at the top, you'll see that we actually have the cube below it overlapping a bit too. So while it is fixable, it's going to take some work. First step is to shrink these, or I guess it's a preference what you start with, but I'm going to start by shrinking these. Alright, so I've shrunk the first block in our overlap, and you can see they actually almost meet up perfectly as they are. I didn't actually anticipate that. That's kind of cool. So I'm going to delete most of these. And then I'm going to take this, I'm going to snap it to this block, and then I'm going to shrink it. So it is 1 by 1 instead of 3 by 3. Then I'm just going to move it around until it's more or less in the middle, just to cover up that little hole. If you don't want to cover up the little hole, that's fine too. So you'll see we do have kind of a pattern going on here because of how the shapes overlap. That's, again, as your angles between your cubes and the sizes of your cubes get more varied, that will happen. If you made the angles more gradual, so if these were 20s and this was maybe 30, it wouldn't be as obvious. And then you would do the same to the bottom. I'm not going to bother adjusting this one. But it is very much just a process of starting with your rings and then adjusting your blocks until they look how you want them to look. So we have got pretty basic oval. We've got a slightly more specialized oval, and then we've got this really tall guy. I'm not too sure what you'd use this for. Maybe something like the body of something really tall, maybe ears of a, I don't know what has round ears, but if you need it, that's how you make it. If not, I wouldn't be surprised. So we have 3 examples. I'm going to do one more, and I'm going to do that one more because often you want to use an oval for something like a body. I know one of you is currently trying to build the head of a little koala dude whose name I can't remember, but I'll put it up on screen. If you were doing that, you would pretty much want to make this green one here, and instead of building it vertically, you'd want to build it horizontally, so your rings arch like this, and then you rotate them around along the horizontal axis instead of the vertical one. However, one more example, which is for, that's not what I wanted to do, which is for the body of Gatomon would be a good idea. I hadn't figured out how to do this yet when I made Gatomon, so her body's a bit more like this. Morphomon, which you saw me doing in the last video, I think I'll end up doing its body like this, because it is round, but it's a little more squished towards the bottom and a little more extended towards the top. If you look at it in game and it doesn't look like that, it's because this is all a trial and error process, and if I made the shape and it didn't look how I wanted, I changed it. So example 4. Put the cube on a bone so we can move it around later. I'm going to duplicate it. Actually, I might make this one taller. We're going to duplicate it, and I'm going to rotate it by -30. Again, -60, but I'm going to shrink it again so it's 2 by 3 instead of 3 by 3. And then -90. I guess you don't have to rotate that by -90. You could also just leave it at 0 and adjust the size. Force of habit for me to do it to -90. It's up to you. So we have the bottom curve, but we're going to do something different for the top curve because Morphomon's body isn't a perfect oval. So I'm going to duplicate this. I'm going to rotate it, but I'm going to rotate it by 20 degrees. And I'm going to leave it 4 cubes tall instead of 3. Again, 20 and 20 is 40. But I'm going to shrink it. And then, just let me think. I might actually do this 3 tall instead of 4. Just because it does seem to be getting pretty long. 40 and then 60. Alright, so we have this ring. It's already pretty different from these in that it's more of a half teardrop shape than a half oval. So we're going to duplicate our bone. I'm going to rotate it by, we'll try -30 and see what happens. Snap that in place. Oh yeah. So you can see there's no real problem there. There's no real problem here that we need to fix. If I wanted to, I could shrink every second block once I'm done so that they don't overlap quite as much. Another personal preference. I generally don't do it, but it's up to you. Alright, so here we have our teardrop body shape. If you're not happy with it, just like you saw me do with the yellow one, you can change sizes. If you want it to be taller, you can extend this. Will make it taller but kind of stretched in the middle like this. If you extend these blocks, it will make it taller with a more gradual curve like this. Maybe you want it to be even flatter at the bottom. You would shorten these. so that the curve kind of cuts across right here. If you're making a sphere and you want it to be, and you want it to have a flattened bottom, it's the same principle, just shorten or tighten the angles on the bottom blocks and then snap them all together so it comes together like this instead of like a perfect sphere. I think that covers everything. If you're making horizontal shapes instead of vertical shapes, just do this whole process horizontally. If you, instead of needing an oval, which is a tall sphere, I guess it's a flat sphere too. If you need a flattened sphere instead of a tall sphere, you would build these and have this block shorter, or you'd tighten these angles. Just play around with it until you see how you like it. So these are 4 examples. I can see using most, if not all of them, in different situations. If you never use them, that's fine. But the better you understand this principle of making rings and being able to vary the rings and then just complete your round shape using those rings, the better you'll be able to make more organic looking shapes. So I think that's all for me. If you have any questions, I will try and help. If I can't help, we'll figure it out together. And have a great day!